Imagine a world where history is stolen. A people rooted in their land are uprooted and replaced. Newcomers are given the land and identity of those they replace. This is settler colonialism, a profound deception. It is a dark truth demanding exposure. Beyond displacement, it's an assault on the soul. At the heart of this replacement is the theft of identity and heritage. This is not merely about taking land or resources. It is about seizing the narrative, the very story that gives a people their sense of self. To force an entire group from their homeland, or reclassify them and then declare that a new group is the original one, is a complete denial of reality. It's a calculated act of psychological warfare designed to break the spirit of the dispossessed. Imagine being told that you are not who you are, that your ancestors never walked the lands your family has known for centuries, and that they were brought over as slaves from Africa. This kind of historical erasure is a weapon, used to invalidate a people's claim to their own existence and justify the actions of the aggressor. To achieve this, the past must be methodically destroyed. The history of the original native people, their achievements, their struggles, and their deep connection to the land must be wiped clean from public consciousness. This isn't something that happens by accident. It requires a deliberate and sustained campaign. Monuments are torn down, sacred sites are desecrated or repurposed, and historical records are altered or burned. The language of the native people is suppressed, their songs are silenced, and their stories are forbidden. In their place, a new, fabricated history is taught in schools and promoted through state-controlled media, one that paints the settlers as the rightful and original inhabitants of a supposedly empty or uncivilized land. The injustice of this act poisons the very soul of the new society. The original native population is left in a state of perpetual limbo, stripped of their land, their history, and their sense of belonging. They become ghosts in their own homeland. Meanwhile, the immigrants who have taken their place are forced to live a lie. Even if they were not willing participants in the initial violence, they become the beneficiaries and sustainers of the injustice. This creates a society built on a fragile and false foundation. Everyone involved, from the oppressors to the oppressed, knows the truth on some level. This shared, unspoken secret breeds deep-seated resentment, fear, and a constant, simmering tension that can erupt at any moment. This entire scenario is a gross violation of fundamental human rights. International laws and conventions, such as the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, exist specifically to prevent such atrocities. These declarations explicitly protect the rights of a people to their culture, their land, and their identity. To systematically strip a group of these rights is to deny their humanity. It is an act that places the perpetrator regime outside the community of civilized nations. It is a profound betrayal of the moral principles that are supposed to guide us. The global community are about to be forced to condemn such actions, recognizing them as a crime against all of humanity, not just against one targeted group, so-called Black Americans. Settler colonialism isn't just about taking land, it's about eliminating the native population, not just physically, but culturally and politically. Through forced removals, assimilation, and propaganda, the settler state erases indigenous presence to claim legitimacy. This is the chilling logic of elimination, a system built to replace, erase, and rewrite history. The act of replacing a people is a profound and unforgivable injustice. To be dispossessed of your land, your history, and your sense of belonging is a wound that cuts deeper than any physical injury. It is a betrayal of the most basic moral obligations we have to one another. There are international agreements like the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. These documents affirm the inherent right of all peoples to their own culture, their own land, and their own identity. It is a form of cultural annihilation that seeks to erase a people from memory. It is an assault on the soul of a community. Erasing history is an active, systematic process, destroying documents, demolishing sacred sites, and changing place names. The land's original language and story are stripped away. In classrooms and libraries, history is rewritten, and native voices are silenced. This erasure is a quiet violence, cultural genocide, leaving a people adrift, their past declared void. A society built on such a monumental lie can never be truly stable for long. It could or may last up to 200 to 300 years. The claim that the immigrant settlers are the new natives would be a known falsehood eventually. This foundational lie undermines the legitimacy of the entire social and political structure. Trust, the essential glue of any functioning society, becomes impossible. How can citizens trust a government that actively manufactures their identity and history? How can neighbors trust each other when they are all complicit in upholding a shared deception? This environment breeds paranoia, cynicism, and a deep-seated unrest that constantly threatens to boil over into open conflict. The state must then resort to increasingly oppressive measures to maintain control. The lie creates permanent and irreconcilable divisions. The new society would be fractured from its inception. There would be the oppressed native group constantly fighting to reclaim their rightful place and expose the truth. There would be the settler group, living in a state of perpetual anxiety, fearing retribution and guarding their stolen identity. And within the settler group itself, divisions would emerge between those who embrace the lie wholeheartedly and those who are tormented by it. This creates a social order that is not just false, but also incredibly fragile. It is a house of cards, built on a foundation of resentment and fear, ready to collapse at the slightest tremor of truth or resistance. Cultural appropriation becomes a hollow and desperate state policy. In an attempt to legitimize their false claim, the new settler society would likely adopt and mimic elements of the stolen native culture. They might perform distorted versions of ancient ceremonies, wear mass-produced copies of traditional clothing, or use bastardized native words in their official language. This is not an act of appreciation. It is a final act of desecration. It is a hollow imitation designed to give their fraudulent identity a veneer of authenticity. In the process, the true native culture is either driven deeper into hiding or completely destroyed, resulting in an irreversible loss of human heritage for the entire world. The culture becomes a caricature, a performance without a soul. The establishment of special schools is the lie made manifest. The creation of institutions specifically designed to train immigrants on how to be native represents the most grotesque and cynical aspect of this entire process. It is the institutionalization of the lie, turning historical theft into a formal curriculum. These schools would be factories of false identity, churning out citizens programmed to perpetuate the deception. This bizarre and perverse form of education would be the final nail in the coffin of historical truth. It reveals the terrifying logic of settler colonialism taken to its extreme conclusion, a world where identity is not inherited but assigned, and where history is not remembered but manufactured by the state to serve its own dark purposes. The nightmare we're describing isn't new, it has a playbook. Settler colonialism replaces native people, not just rules them. Its goal? Eliminate and replace using land theft, forced removal, and violence. The Virginia Racial Integrity Act is just one brutal example. Even the land and culture are targeted, destroyed to erase resistance and ensure settler dominance. Elimination is not just physical, it is a war on the soul. The settler state targets culture, severing native people from their language, traditions, and children. Through forced assimilation, residential schools, and bans on ceremonies, the goal is to erase identity and replace it with a fabricated version. This leaves a legacy of loss, as the original people mourn not just land, but the essence of their being. The state brings in new settlers, offering land and protection, while the native population is pushed aside and reclassified. This flood of immigrants solidifies control, turning natives into a minority in their own homeland. The story is recast as progress and national triumph, justifying the dispossession as destiny. Special schools teach newcomers a state-approved version of native culture, erasing the original people. A nation built on such a crime cannot hide from the world anymore, which is why USA is up for judgment. There's no hiding it anymore. The regime known as USA Corps are getting ready to face crippling sanctions, isolation, and loss of legitimacy, becoming a pariah state, a global symbol of injustice. The greatest threat to the regime would come from within. The native population would resist, first with peaceful protests, then with armed struggle as oppression intensified. The state would respond with brutal force, building a police state of surveillance, secret police, COINTELPRO operation, and prisons overflowing with dissenters. Society would fracture, hardliners enforcing the lie, dissenters aiding the resistance, and a climate of paranoia and distrust. The regime would fight not only the native resistance, but also its own disillusioned citizens. Resources would be drained, unity shattered, and the government held together only by violence and propaganda. Eventually, the pressure would become too great, and the regime, built on lies, would collapse, leaving a legacy of trauma and division. No society can survive a war against its own soul. A lie of this size is impossible to contain forever. Despite censorship, the truth would leak out through digital media, smuggled documents, and forbidden stories. The younger generation, sensing the hollowness of their society, would question everything, becoming the lie's greatest threat. The psychological toll would be immense: identity crises, depression, and a longing for authenticity. As faith in the regime crumbles, the political structure would collapse, not just from defeat, but from a total loss of belief. The unraveling would be swift and chaotic, leaving a society forced to confront its origins and the near-impossible task of reconciliation. The truth, once revealed, cannot be unlearned. The new society would be born with a fatal flaw: a lack of legitimacy. The foundational lie would poison every institution, creating a brittle, paranoid community. Deep divisions would persist, oppressed natives, fractured settlers, and a culture of suspicion. The result is a hollow society where rituals are empty and history is fiction. Settlers, cut off from both their own roots and the land's true heritage, would feel like imposters, never truly belonging. Aggressive nationalism would mask deep insecurity, but could never replace genuine connection. The society would be rich in land but poor in spirit, forever haunted by the truth it tried to erase. Belonging cannot be manufactured, it must be earned. The land itself would remember. Ancient ruins, sacred sites, and old names would persist, silent witnesses to the crime. The native culture, driven underground, would survive in secret, fueling resistance and hope. Meanwhile, much authentic heritage would be lost, replaced by a hollow imitation for propaganda. Settlers, forced to abandon their own histories, would become culturally unmoored, belonging nowhere. Their children would inherit this emptiness, defined only by a lie. The ghosts of the past cannot be buried by decree. In this state, culture becomes a weapon. Art, music, and ritual are twisted into tools of conformity and propaganda. Schools teach children to perform a fake identity, erasing both their own heritage and the land's true story. Authenticity becomes dangerous. Obedience is rewarded. The result is a cynical, superficial society where trust and genuine connection are impossible. The nation, built on lies, becomes a cultural desert, broken, empty, and illegitimate. Even if power is maintained by force, the soul of the society is lost. You cannot build a future by erasing the past. The outcome of this dark project is a wound that never heals. Settler colonialism inflicts irreversible damage, stealing land and identity. For Native people, it's multi-generational trauma and loss. Their connection to ancestors and land is shattered. Even if acknowledged, broken lineages and lost language remain. Settler society is spiritually bankrupt, living as imposters. Built on lies, their society is unstable and corrupt. Suppressing truth creates fear and paranoia. They achieve a nation but lose humanity. Prosperity is poisoned by the crime that enabled it. History is torn, a crime against truth. Reality is bent to the will of the powerful. It suggests any population can be erased. This weakens the moral foundations of the international community. The loss of a single culture is an irreversible loss for humanity, like burning a library with unique books. We must recognize this as ultimate destruction. No victory, only varying degrees of loss. Replacement creates a graveyard of memory. The aggressor state creates a failed society. The ramifications are catastrophic. Understanding this is vital for awareness. We must expose this truth to prevent it. The lie, once told, echoes through generations, its damage lingering long after the truth is revealed. Descendants of the native population rebuild identity from fragments, while settlers' heirs face shame and confusion. The land itself holds these memories, every landmark a reminder of unresolved conflict. True reconciliation means honoring the real history, learning from the past, and forging a future built on truth. Beneath the Kansas state capitol lies more than stone and steel. It rests on stories intentionally silenced. Imagine a hidden archive documents detailing broken treaties and the forced removal of the Kaw, Osage, and Pawnee. This history challenges the Capitol's narrative of progress. Governments have always controlled what's remembered, shaping public perception and justifying their actions. Kansas's official story skips centuries of indigenous life and the violence that cleared the land for white settlement. The true founding documents aren't just the Constitution, but the treaties that dispossess Native nations. Why hide these records? They're an indictment, proof of land theft, forced marches, and cultural destruction. For a state proud of its Free State legacy, this history is a profound embarrassment. Hiding these records preserves the state's mythology and makes it easier to deny Native claims today. The Capitol's foundation becomes a symbol power built on hidden injustice. Its grandeur masks the rot of broken promises, waiting to be brought into the light. Concealing records protects power and avoids accountability. The truth about Kansas's founding is messy. Land grabs, coerced treaties, and policies to erase Native presence. Revealing these documents would tarnish state heroes and expose a legacy of corruption. Treaties are legal documents. Their violation could open the door to land claims and lawsuits. It's easier for the state to claim records are lost than to face legal consequences. This isn't poor record keeping. It's a strategy to sidestep obligations and control land. The myth of Kansas as a land of pioneers unites the non-native population, while indigenous history is reduced to a footnote. Introducing the full story would force citizens to question their place in history, an uncomfortable truth. Hiding records is an extension of the original violence first removal, then erasure from memory. The silence in the archives is as violent as the forced marches of the past. It's colonization by paperwork, not guns. Hiding inconvenient truths in government is both simple and devious. Secret storage areas off the official index become tombs for sensitive documents. Mislabeling files, placing damning treaties in boxes marked agricultural reports, makes them nearly impossible to find. Officials claim records are misplaced, not hidden, turning concealment into a clerical error. Access is restricted by unwritten rules. Some collections are known only to insiders. Archivists can be pressured to delay, deny, or lie about records' existence. The most insidious method, slow destruction, shredding, burning, or letting documents decay. By the time anyone notices, the evidence is dust, and the official version stands unchallenged. Is an allegory for erasing Native history in Kansas. Dorothy's gray, empty Kansas reflects the settler view of the land as a blank slate. The tornado whisks her to a fantasy world, distracting from the real, erased history. The wizard's illusions mirror Kansas's heroic myths, hiding the violence of its founding. The Wicked Witch under Dorothy's house symbolizes the buried indigenous past, eliminated and unexamined. The story never asks what home was built upon. It focuses on the spectacle, not the foundation. Both Oz and Kansas depend on not looking too closely at origins. The wizard hides behind a curtain. The state hides its history in archives, reflects a nation preferring fantasy over reckoning with forgotten histories. Uncovering hidden history beneath the Capitol isn't about blame. It's about truth for the present and future. Forgetting is an active choice that continues harm. Indigenous descendants live with these consequences. Denying access to history perpetuates injustice and cripples the future. Facing Kansas's real story, conflict, dispossession, survival, is essential for honest identity. This isn't about guilt, but understanding. Uncovering history is justice, restoring silenced voices and validating experiences. For non-native people, it's a chance to become responsible inhabitants. Learning the true history is the first step toward respect and reconciliation. The fight to open archives is a fight against ongoing erasure and for accountability. Only by exposing the foundation can we rebuild on solid ground, stronger and true. Despite the assault, the human spirit remains powerful. Settler colonialism operates on a flawed premise. Culture is a living entity in people's hearts. The spirit of a people can endure. Resilience is the ultimate act of resistance. The truth simply is, truth erodes the foundations of lies. Knowledge is a call to action. Healing requires truth and reconciliation.